then it's their liability.
Yes.
Right.
It's like people on the street, what about
Well,
neighbors trying to back out of their driveway?
Well,
What
and
about,
you go
I mean,
I mean, you know, it's very different visibility when I drive my Mazda to drive my
Like there were a couple of choices, but I was just
Forerunner,
like,
to
well,
drive
this is
my
something
tractor,
that's
to
gonna
drive
use
my, you know,
my
they
guess
all
is
have
because-
very different visibilities, you know.
to make sure that it worked.
So-
And I don't use an authenticator for anything else right
Yeah.
now, so, but if you do,
I think I've gotten it, and I don't know if it's because.
Oh, we have agua. Pure life.
oh, yeah.
Probably on some kind of Google something,
Yeah.
or maybe this is an app, you know, cause it's in the app,
Mm-hmm.
Google app, then you've gotta do it.
Right.
I think that's one.
If you get stuck, you can call me and I can, won't be
Okay.
Construction fences, speaking of which.
Thanks.
Sure.
There's Roxanne.
I'm back,
She is here.
Oh,
like a bad kitty.
All right, the city council for the city of Rollingwood will come to order on March 9th, 2022 at 7:01. 1 minute late. And with that, we will move to item number 1, roll call. We can start at the end.
Brooke Brown, present.
Alec Robinson, present.
Phil McDuffie present.
Sarah Hudson.
Gavin Massigo, present.
Roxanne McKee.
And Roxanne is with us via virtual. Hey, Roxanne.
Hey there.
Moving on to public comment. Do we have anything, public comment, not already on the agenda?
Just walked in. Do you have public comment, Shanti?
I have for different items, but there's no sheet there.
I'm sorry. Yes, I know.
No problem. Are you,
You still can get it.
you can.
No,
You-
for items.
Oh, for
on the
items that
agenda.
are on the agenda. I got you. Okay, great. All right, hearing no public comments for other items, then we will move on to item number 3, presentation, discussion, and possible action on the fiscal year 2020-2021 audit by ABIP. I think we have Ms. Pittman here. Hello.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here this evening to go over the results of your 2021 audit. You have 2 packages in front of you. One is just a bound document, the other is a letter. And I'm going to go briefly through the bound document first. Hopefully you've had a chance to review it, so if you have any questions as we go through the report, just let me know. Starting on page 1 is our independent auditor's opinion. It is what we call an unmodified opinion. It's the best opinion that you can receive from your auditors. And it basically says your financials are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and we did not make any modifications to that statement. I was just going to give you a few brief highlights. On page 18 are your funds of the city. Your general fund, your debt service fund, your drainage fund, they're all considered major funds. And then you have a column that says other non-major governmental funds. They didn't meet the qualification materiality to be presented as a major fund, but they are listed separately in the back of your report beginning on page 59. The most important number on that page is under your general fund, your unassigned fund balance, 1.6 million. That represents 8 months of operating expenditures. Last year was 6.8 months of operating expenditures. And the the standard would be 4 to 6 months. So you've got a very healthy general fund balance meant to be spent on the ongoing operations of the city. I wanted to skip over to page 22 and 23. These are your enterprise funds, your water and your sewer fund. I wanted to make note that your net position is unrestricted net position in the water fund is $156,000, and you have a deficit in your sewer fund. What we really look at is your working capital, your current assets less your current liabilities. You have a good operating expense to qualify for. It's okay, but you don't have any operating reserves. So we want to watch that and see if we can build it. You can see on page 23 that the wastewater fund, the sewer fund, has had a little increase in its net position this year. The water fund had a decrease of a little over $300,000. Most of that was due to the repairs and maintenance expenses this year. Was $35,000 last year. This year was a little over $300,000. You had some repairs for crossroads, and then also you did a mapping of the manholes for the GPS mapping. We just want to watch those two funds. On page 27 starts your notes to the financial statements. I'm not going to go through these. There's no new notes from last year, and it's really just some basic information about the numbers that are in the front of the report. The one that we do like to highlight is on the bottom of page 31. It's your cash and investments footnote. One of the items that we do while we're doing our audit is reviewing your investment policy to make sure it's in compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act. And one of those items that we look at is to make sure that you were fully collateralized during the year, and the city was. Now I'm going to skip all the way to page 51. This is your budget to actual schedule for the general fund. We are required to present both the original and the final budget. You can see under the total revenues, you had a negative variance of a little over $300,000. I wanted to tell you that not to be alarmed by that number. The large difference there was in the intergovernmental. You received your ARPA funds. You had a budget for a little over $200,000. We moved that to a balance sheet item this year. You did receive the money, but you can't claim it as revenue until you start spending it, which will be in fiscal year 2022. So it shows that you have a negative variance, but you did get the dollars. And then you had a savings in your total expenditures. You budgeted $2.6 million, and you spent $2.4. So overall, that was a good budget to actual. On page 59, those are where your smaller governmental funds are presented. If you wanted to know how one of the smaller funds that you have was operating, that's where you would look for that. And our last report begins on page 65. It's our report on your internal controls and compliance with federal laws, state laws. If we had any internal control problems or segregation of duty issues, it would be in this report, but we are pleased to say that we did not have anything to report there. And the very last thing is the letter. This is really just basic information. It's required that we report to you, to the city council. Wasn't going to read it word for word. I just wanted to highlight, again, we already talked about it on page 3. We do disclose that you were in compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act. That's all I have. If you have any questions, I surely would be glad to entertain those right now.
Council, any questions? Sarah?
I have a question, nobody else does. So this may have been this way for years and it just never stuck out to me. But when I was reading through this there are multiple references in here to management did something and management was consulted and management is responsible and whatever. But there is never anywhere that I could find that defines who management is. And so I can't really tell if that is the management of your firm, if that's the management of the city, if the management of the city means Gavin or Ashley or city council. Pretty sure it's not city
us.
council. Well, but
But
it's not defined anywhere.
Okay, well, I appreciate that comment, and I will take it back to the firm. It really does mean management of your office. So it would be Ashley and Abel, people that are running the departments.
Because to me, it made more sense, that terminology makes more sense if you're auditing a company, but when you're auditing a city, it seems like there would be a more descriptive way of referencing that would make more sense to somebody else who's picking it up and going, well, I don't know who management is.
I appreciate the comment because I've never heard that comment, but I do appreciate it because it's important to us that we are very clear about what we're trying to say.
Any other questions or comments?
Can you repeat some of the comments you made? Sorry.
Yes.
Repeat some of the comments you made about the water and wastewater funds, and what are some metrics like we should be targeting, or if you kind of mentioned maybe we want to watch that.
Well, you can, if you look at the bottom of page 22, you've got your net position is a key number. So in the water fund, you have 1.7, almost $1.7 million invested in your capital assets. So that number is your capital assets less the debt that you've got to purchase those capital assets. Your unrestricted net position is only $156,000. It doesn't. There's nothing. There's not enough money in there for any kind of future. I mean, it's positive, but there's no future dollars in there for new water facilities or whatever you need. The wastewater fund is creeping up. It's been in a deficit position for a few years, but it is gaining a little bit each year. But then we also look at your current assets and your current liabilities, and you've got enough dollars there to pay all your current liabilities.
Okay.
So, can I ask a clarifying question on that?
Sure.
So, explain what the net investment in capital assets is, because I'm curious why we have a positive, a number for the water system and not for the wastewater system.
Because the wastewater system is in a deficit, it doesn't have enough to, you can't have, I think we had it grossed up last year, we had investment in but we had a huge negative unrestricted position.
So the asset is strictly cash, money, whatever, not the actual system itself.
The net investment in capital assets, if you took your capital assets less your debt, that's how you come up with your net investment in capital assets. But because you have a deficit position in that fund, you can't gross the net investment in capital assets up, and then you would have a much larger unrestricted net position.
Okay, so because we still have outstanding bond debt, that makes our balance negative for the wastewater.
Well, you have a net position, a deficit in there because you actually spend more than you are receiving in that fund. If you look at page 23, you had $745,000 in operating revenues, but 1.145 in expenses. Just for your operating income.
So we just did a wastewater rate study. How does that happen?
Great question.
This is exactly what that was supposed to resolve.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, my main
Sorry.
point was like right now, I mean, was just to try and understand it, cause I don't, you know, I'm kinda new to this, but also, just to try and get some, like, ideas about where we should be going in the future. What should we, you know, what should it be? What do other cities look like? Cause to me, it seems like these are sort of like businesses. It seems like you should be able to like, at least, you know.
You're
have a
exactly
grow,
right. It's a whole different concept than the governmental funds. They're
Mhm.
on the modified accrual basis. So you don't show all these capital assets on the line items. But it is like a business enterprise.
Mhm.
And you should have a net position, a positive net position to pay for future, it's more future look, what do I need in the future?
Mhm.
So
And
you
I
did
guess-
have an increase from last year in your revenues of $100,000, but you also had an increase in your expenses of about the same.
Yeah,
And
repair
some of that may
maintenance
be a
really
discussion
high.
that we need to have on what those expenses were. I mean, we're still looking through some crossroads, but
Well, that, I was just thinking about, that's the difference.
right.
When we did the wastewater rate study, we didn't have Crosswood doing all of this stuff,
That's
and
right.
they're way more
And
costly
we're-
than what we were paying before.
In the process of, well, we've already scaled that back, but we're in the process of making sure it's all been properly cataloged, classified.
Yeah.
This is not new. It's been like this for,
But to Sarah's point, we did do the rate setting to try to rectify that.
and
Which
there
it-
was an increase.
Seems like it's,
There was an increase in the revenues.
yeah. So we just need to go back and look at our expense side.
Not enough to compensate for the
Right.
increase in
Right.
our expenses.
Okay.
Bless you.
Okay, sorry. I
No,
didn't mean
questions?
to jump on top of you.
No,
We
no,
had
no.
more questions.
I'm just looking
whatever.
at last year versus this year was all in system operation. Was a lot more this year than last year. Again, we do also look at the current working capital, which is your current assets less your current liabilities. You've got enough cash there to, so if you look at the water fund, you've got total current assets of 654,000. And then you've got current liabilities, which means current, within a year you have to pay. It's 128,000. So you've got enough cash in there to pay your current liabilities. And the same with the wastewater fund.
Yep.
So in the wastewater fund, you've got $830,000 in your current assets, which is made up of cash and accounts receivable, which you'll be getting in. And then the total current liabilities is $498,000. And it gets a little tricky because the $400,000, you've got a bond payment to be made. Those dollars are collected in the debt service fund as part of your property tax. So you're gonna get dollars from the debt service fund transferred into the wastewater fund to make that payment. Sorry, it's a little confusing.
I have a question.
Okay,
You know, we sold, tax notes
yes,
a
last
year or
year,
two ago.
Last
and-
year.
Last year, and haven't used the proceeds. Where is that reflected in the,
They went into the
balance sheet or
general fund, let me see.
statement of net position? Is that in the,
I believe they're in the general fund. Yes, they're in the it's in the general fund. So it's in your cash, in your general fund.
so, page 15, it's in the 5 million total
I got
for
2 years
cash.
going on here. Page 15. Page 15 is all of your funds combined. So that includes debt service dollars, so if you actually look at page 18, that's where your tax dollars are in that 3.6 million.
Okay, so cash, the first line under general fund.
Yes, ma'am.
When you go to the total then, where is it? The combined totals funds, where is it? Back to page 15, is it shown on there or?
It's inside under the governmental fund. It's part of the governmental activities number.
Okay, but it would be in the cash number for governmental activities there?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
Good question. Any others? Comment? Bill? Ms. McKee, are you good?
Oh,
It was muted, but I think it was, yes, I got it. Okay. All right. Okay. Janet, thank you so much. We also have Abel here if anyone has questions of an internal nature, but thank you, as always.
Thank you, and I
Appreciate
did want to thank Ashley and Abel for getting us everything we needed to do our audit. We tried to do it remotely. We won't do that again.
it. Yes, we're all glad to have that behind us.
Yeah, we're done with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will need to have a motion to approve and accept the audit report. I'm happy to take that from whoever wants to make it.
Motion to approve the audit report as presented.
You have a motion for Ms. Hudson to approve the audit report as presented.
I'll second.
You have a second for Ms. Brown. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Ayes have it, 5-0. All right, with that, we will move on to item number 4. Mayor's State of the City discussion with City Council. This is a new item that I'm going to suggest that I bring to you on an annual basis. I'd like to see it be sort of a cross between a State of the State / State of the Union and if you're nerdy enough to ever watch British Parliament, oral questions to the Prime Minister. Hopefully you're with less booing associated with it. But anyway, I want it to be a casual discussion. It's not as specific as what we might see on the agenda related to specific items. It's a little bit broader, more vision-based, and I won't take a great deal of time, but I want you all to know, you know, as you see from the audit report, I do think we're in a very financially strong position. I'm very proud of the fact that we're at an 8-month operating reserve now. Sarah will remember where we were at 3 some years ago, and we've made a conscious effort to try to build that over the last several years. Abel has done a great job in helping steward that. And the fact that we're now at an 8-month operating reserve, I think, is great. I do agree from an accounting perspective, 3 or 4 is what they look for, but from a bond rating perspective, that is not what they would like for a city our size, because the dollar amounts are so small. They were really always pressing us to do a much longer operating reserve because of the dollar amounts. I'm proud that we had, a budgeted amount of $2.6 million last time, and as the auditor said, we spent 2.4, so we had a savings of $200,000 in the last fiscal year. I think those are all, proof positive of our fiscal constraint that we show here and have shown for the last many years. We do run a tight ship with tight budgets. We are in a financially strong position. I think that sometimes is confused in conversations that are had around of our community. Being in a strong financial position and being broke are sometimes not that far apart, but they're very different. And so, we don't need to confuse being in a financially strong position with being confused that means that we're flush with cash because we're not. We do a good job of prioritizing and have for many years, but that doesn't mean that we have a lot of extra, especially when our budget is, 2.6 million in discretionary budgeting. So, but I'm pleased with that. I want you all to know that for 2022, what I hope to do from the mayor's position is really kind of focus on three things. First and foremost, I'm going to put staffing at the top of my priority list. I've visited with some of you about this. I think we're making some great strides in that regard. I hope you've all had a chance to meet Michaela, our newest addition to the team. That is our assistant to the city manager position. I think she's going to do a great job. She's got a great skill set. She's anxious to learn all the different components and all the different departments. She's going to take a lot of load off of Ashley's plate. I think he's already done that. I heard the excitement in her voice earlier when Michaela was taking this seat at the end of the dais today to turn on the recording. So we're excited about that A2A. This is a new terminology that Ashley's taught me recently, that A2A position with Michaela. We have posted, as of a few days ago, the city secretary position. I'm going to look at that and try to get a good person into this corner office so that we've got somebody to focus on process and minutes and postings and that sort of thing, those day-to-day operational things that a city secretary does. As you know, Ashley's been doing double duty on interim administrator and city secretary, so we're looking to kind of fill that position. We're also going to get someone there. Our hope is to get someone there who has a broad skill set that can really help in some other areas where needed, and also focus on what I'm going to tell you my next big item is, and that's to really do a systems review. We're also going to, before I get off of staffing though, we're also posting, or have posted, in fact did an interview this week for our public works superintendent position. Going to try to focus on that public works. We've got Vicki and Nate who are doing a great job for us in public works, but with only 2 folks in public works, when historically we've had as many as 4 or 5, I think, at one point. We really have to focus there because we've got a lot of work to do with all of these water issues. Public works also, they do double duty with helping manage the park and keep it clean and do those sorts of things. We're just really stretched thin on a lot of these staffing areas. So staffing for me, from a mayor's position, is kind of my number one priority. I think when those positions get filled and when we get our team really kind of rounded out, it's going to make things go a lot smoother. Not they're not going smooth, but the staff is really spread thin, and I want to focus on that to really kind of up our game in that direction. Back to the city secretary, we hope to get someone in here with a different, not a different, but a broad skill set, because the second thing I want to really focus on in 2022 is what I call a systems review and a best practices review. And this may take on a number of different different avenues. I want us to, across all departments, really look at how we do things and what the systems are in place on how we do those things. The utility billing comes to mind as a system. It's a new system for us, so I'm not pointing any fingers, but I think there are checks and balances that could have been in place to allow us to catch some of our hiccups that we had with an early implementation of that. I think if we had better systems in place and had reviewed those systems and had made sure that we had some checks and balances, that we would have caught some of those hiccups quicker. So that's just one example, but whether it's that or human resources, I mean, we don't have we have a personnel manual, but I don't know that we have a really solid, we don't have it committed to paper on how we hire someone. I mean, Abel knows, Ashley knows, but we need to commit those things to paper. We need to commit those things to systems so that we can always do it the same way consistently every time. Ashley and we're working on a maintenance and operations list and a recurring reports list. There are a lot of lists. There are a lot of systems that I think can be improved. Our filing system around here, we talk a lot about the GIS system. And fortunately, we have our archivist here tonight, Shanti. We're fortunate to have all of her historical and institutional knowledge that is stored in boxes that I think she's shared with Sarah and Brooke and others. And we're fortunate to have that, but we also need a better system on how we manage those things and how we store things. And so I'm hoping, Ashley and I have talked about, we're hoping to get someone in to this corner office who can do those city secretary roles, but also who can take sort of one department at a time and make sure that we have committed to paper our systems so that we kind of do things the same way every time, and so we can think through them. As we've talked, you know, if any one of us is, we don't have a lot of redundancy built into any department, and so that's not terrible because we're such a small city and we do run on tight budgets. But if one of us is hit by a bus crossing the street, we're up a creek, and we have to get ahead of that and prepare and plan for that. So that's kind of the second thing I want that my plan is to focus on over 2022. The third thing, very important, it's going to take all of us being led by this council, being led by all of our community leaders and our boards and commissions, but it is time for us to have a robust discussion about a bond election. And I've danced around it, we've all danced around it, but we've done a great deal of work the past 3 years, for sure, 4 probably, if you really counted it. But whether it's having a discussion about these facilities or our capital improvements plan, which AKA our water lines, or our infrastructure, IIP infrastructure improvement plan, also known as our drainage infrastructure. Between those 3 things, there are a great deal of big ticket items, and I'm not saying that we're going to be able to fund all of them by any means, but it is time for us to have a discussion as a community about taking care of some of that long-term planning. And I think we have laid the groundwork. We've got the comprehensive plan, which has begun to pull all of that together. I'm excited about the comp plan work sessions that we've had. We'll have those posted so that we will have kind of reviewed that for all the community. But then I think it's time for us to take it to the next phase after that and begin to have a community-wide discussion on actually putting pen to paper, deciding how much of that, all of those things that we've talked about, we want to try to bite off and fund and complete over the next several years. And I don't have the answer tonight, and I don't think that that's for us to decide tonight, but I do think it is a discussion. It's a community-wide discussion, and then, for lack of a better term, a campaign moving forward to try to garner the support among the community to do those things. So those kind of constitute the 3 major sort of categories that I want to focus on in 2022. There's lots of, there's a ton of other things. In fact, between Ashley's whiteboard in her office and my list of to-dos, there's a great deal of other stuff that we're going to cover. But in terms of the big picture, things that in my opinion move the needle long term, those are the 3 that I really want to focus on in 2022. So that's where I am, and open to be questioned or booed from anyone, but I just wanted to have that dialogue in a kind of a broad sense with you guys.
Sounds like a good plan.
Cool. All right. If there's nothing
Sounds
else,
good.
if there's no, I'm gonna get out of here while I. Yeah, I'm gonna quit while I'm ahead. So I'm glad to know that that meets your approval. If it doesn't, and you want to yell at me in private, you all have my cell phone. So with that, we will close item number 4 and move on to the consent agenda. Happy to take a motion.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Hudson and a second, was that you, Phil? From Phil to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Okay, with that, we move on to the regular agenda. We have 2 items here, and we have 2 individuals who are here to visit with us. The first is our able of council external of council, Martha Dickey, and the other is Mary Elizabeth Kofer on item number 9. Unfortunately, Mary, I've told you both that you're gonna get to go first. And as much as I love you, Martha, residents and constituents get to go first. So, I'm gonna pull up item number 9. I will ask council, though, I don't think there's anything controversial here. If it does drag on, we will, leave it pending, and then we'll move. Yes, yes. Well, I'm trying to manage that piece of it, right? So, well, but TML's paying for it, so it should be okay.
It's you.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll try to move quickly on item number 9, and with that, calling up item number 9, discussion and possible action on a recommendation from the Park Commission regarding funding request to the Rollingwood Women's Club regarding an expansion of the Butterfly Garden. Mary?
Hi, Mary Elizabeth Kofer, 3306 Gentry Drive. So I'm currently serving on the Park Commission, and what we are proposing to do is to expand the current butterfly garden, which was kind of roughed out last year, but it was done with no funds from the city or anyone, except for some people that take their dogs to the park. They donated some funds, and actually Phil helped me do some digging, but a few people donated plants. But now what we're trying to do is expand it and make it look nicer. And the city got water to that area, so we now can water the plants. So our proposal is that we almost double that in size, bring in some bigger plants, border that with some stone, bring in a bench, and we're actually, do y'all have the map there that shows it, the diagram? We will be putting a steel trellis to the back of it. That'll kind of show, because the drop-off is behind that. And then the idea is to have a bench to the side so that people can sit to enjoy this. We've got the funding for this as it is, what our costs are. The Rollingwood Women's Club has approved the funding, and they told me that if I need more, that I can come back to them. But this is what we're looking at right now, and I need your blessing.
Motion, I'll make a motion. Motion to approve the funding request to the Rollingwood Women's Club regarding an expansion of the butterfly garden.
Second.
You have a motion from Mr. Robinson, a second from Mr. McDuffie, and let's discuss further if we want to. Is there further discussion? I do have one question for you, Mary, on the trellis. Talk to me a little bit more about the trellis. And the only reason I ask, I occasionally have concerns on that sort of thing, just from a maintenance perspective.
That's a good question. We originally planned this in wood, but we realized then we're looking at something that isn't sustainable.
All right.
So instead, we went to steel.
Okay.
And it's about 8 foot long, 6 foot tall, but it will be set in cement. And I think we're going with 3-inch steel post. And the wire itself will be hog wire. So we're looking for something that will last.
And then the vision is to have a growth up.
Yes.
Okay.
With plants that will attract butterflies.
Okay. Okay.
But that was a good question, because I could have done it for a lot less money
Right.
otherwise, but we don't want to revisit this in 10 years.
I agree.
Any other questions? Any volunteers to come dig? Yes. By the way,
You
I'm
are always
writing
doing
these
that.
names down, by the way.
I'm right behind you guys.
I saw that.
All right, great. Any other discussion? So you have a motion and a
Put
second.
me on the water schedule too.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
I'm close.
Okay.
All right, you have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Ayes have it, 5-0.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We'll now move back to agenda item number 8, discussion regarding cause number D1GN 15-004220, Owen Brainerd and Sally Brainerd v. City of Rollingwood, Texas, Colleen Preheim and Todd Preheim. And with that, we will move into, and this is just just for the record, this is just an update with our outside city council regarding a pending lawsuit. And we'll just giving our new council members an update on some of these items that are pending in the court system. And with that, we will move into executive session under Local Government Code 551.071, and we will go into executive session at 7:39.
Yes, you have to go. Are we gonna do it in here? So, well, but then we'll lose Roxanne.
Do you want us to move out?
We could just do it in here.
No, not at all. I've been there, done it. I mean, executive session, so, go ahead.
We're only kicking one person out.
Well, she was leaving.
Yeah. I'm glad the butterflies went first.
How you doing, Martha? Long time no see.
I know. You thought I'd gone away. You just.
Yes, for those listening online, I think that's Sarah and Kevin. We are going to go into executive session, and how are we doing this?
We are going to send Roxanne and ourselves into a breakout room
Okay.
as our plan currently.
Okay, so we will be exiting, and then we'll.
The camera.
What's that?
The camera?
Yeah.
We could turn the camera off. She doesn't need to
Well, as
see
long as they
that.
can't hear us. That's fine.
I'm not sure. I'm so sorry. Y'all mind if we go in there? Can Roxanne call in?
Roxanne, do you mind? Okay, we're gonna have to go to the back office. Roxanne, can you call in?
My phone out and then, I'm sorry, I didn't.
What number do you want me to call?
Do you want me to call your cell phone, Roxanne, or your home phone?
Home phone would be better.
Okay. All right. Sorry, everybody.
Well,
No
so
problem.
you go tell Shanti she doesn't have to be out in the cold.
Okay.
restrictions were in place at the time you bought it. Caveat emptor, you didn't research that, you wanted to hang outside the lines, we said no.
No, it's okay.
And now we're in a lawsuit, but the lines were there the whole time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's a very defensible position.
Test, test.
Hopefully we're not.
Should I leave the door open now?
Whatever you wanna do, Shanti.
Cooler area.
Well, now we have funner things, Zilker Clubhouse stuff.
It's different, the climate altogether.
That's how in buildings had a bunch of meetings.
Yeah, Amber was always freaking us all out, and we never figured out why.
Yeah, toasty in there.
So we are back up and running in New York.
Okay. We will adjourn the executive session at 8:27 and go back into regular session at 8:27. And no action was taken on any items. With that, we will, and there is no further action to be taken on item number 9 unless I see anything from council. With that, we'll move on to item number 10, discussion regarding the Zilker Clubhouse Rehabilitation Project. I put this item on our agenda, council members. There is really no action to be taken. We can discuss it if you want. It's really mainly for our records and for your knowledge to have this on the agenda. It came to our attention that the city of Austin will be doing some rehabilitation to the Zilker Clubhouse, and we wanted to try to follow that, let you know about it in case you're interested to follow that through the city of Austin. We did monitor the hearing that they had on it, or the meeting that they had on it. And for some reason, it didn't actually come up, did it?
It got approved in consent, so they do their agendas different. They list them all out and then pull some off consent, and so it was approved unanimously, I guess, on consent. But nothing really changes the footprint other than decreases it. Roof replacement, historical, rehabilitation of doors, windows, and light fixtures.
It seemed pretty basic. I don't think there's anything to worry about, but just wanted you all know about it in case you wanted to do your own research on it.
It seems to me to be a good thing for us,
I think it,
because if they spend all that money rehabbing that clubhouse, that reduces the odds that they're gonna do something,
outlandish.
Yeah.
yes, something that we wouldn't like,
I tend,
access to that area.
yes, I tend to agree with that.
Yeah.
So, the main thing I think we ought to keep an eye on, and I haven't seen it, and I think that it's really just about the structure itself. If they were to do a huge expansion of the parking or something like that, we might have some issues, but I didn't see anything like that. So if any of you do, let us know.
Their
But
drainage would not come to us, though.
no, I just meant if they're anticipating a large influx of people, we might be interested in that. But I don't see that. I just want to let you all know.
It could.
Anything else? Any comments, questions? All right, with that, we will close item number 10. Move on to agenda item number 11, discussion regarding future ordinance amendments related to residential water line and meter relocation policies. And this is an item that I had staff put back on for your discussion and consideration. We've talked about this in past meetings, and I know that council had some desire to actually follow through on some sort of policy. I didn't want to take it upon ourselves to come up with that policy until we had a little bit more guidance from council. I did have staff put together in your one-pager regarding this item, a little bit more information, some background, and what would be staff's recommendation. That's really for discussion purposes. I think you've all had a chance to take a look at it, and it's really just to get your creative juices flowing on how you might want to approach that. So you don't have to do anything on it this evening, but we did tell you we would bring it back, and so we So we did.
Can we get a list of where all the backyard meters are?
We can do that.
Because I think that would be helpful to know where we still have backyard meters in place.
I actually asked that question last week, and we did not know the answer. So yes, it's a good question.
Well, to know if we've got 5 or 50.
I
you
asked,
know.
that's how I phrased it. I said, how many are we talking about?
Well,
Everybody on
and,
Rollingwood.
and we also have the
Not
issue of
everybody.
if there's still meters in backyards where the backyard line has been abandoned, and so there is a connection to the main in the street, but we apparently haven't coordinated maps between L&B and K-Freeze to know that we've identified all those.
Yes.
I have some comments when we're ready for them on this item.
Go for it.
Okay, here's my concern. The memo expresses a concern that there's that it's problematic to require a new project to pay the full amount for a new connection, but for the city to pay the cost for existing homes down the line. In my view, I think that's a false equivalency. Every home, for example, my house, the meter's in the front, but I had to pay for the connection between my house and that meter when my house was built. And so the comparison isn't between someone who built a house and paid for a connection and then someone coming down the line and building a new house. That person coming down the line and building a new house is obligated under the current ordinance to build that line to the place where the city tells that builder to put the meter. What our ordinance says is close as practicable. The city requires each customer's water meter be located as close as practicable to the city water distribution system. So you have the reimbursement that exists currently is where someone who built a house, complied with the requirement to build the connection to the main, has built that connection, and now the city's moved the main. And so what we're reimbursing is for the city's movement of we're reimbursing that current homeowner because the city moved the main. But that puts that person in the same position as, as they were in, so to speak. They've already paid for a connection to the main. Now the city's moved the main. So we're not trying to compare a new home builder or someone who's torn down that existing house with knowledge where the main is and where they would be obligated under our current ordinance to put their meter. They're not equivalent to some person who's already connected to the meter under the ordinance and now the main is moved. So I think that's a false equivalency. And
Okay.
I think if our ordinance doesn't allow the staff to tell the new builder or remodeler, there's a gray line somewhere between someone who's adding on a room and someone who's doing a complete tear down. And that's just a judgment call, and the cards fall where they fall.
Yeah.
But, for someone who is doing a demolishing, we're not treating them unfairly by imposing on them the same requirement that they connect to the main at the closest practicable spot. That's even. There's no reason to reimburse for that because we require every resident to connect to the main at the closest practicable spot. I presented, it came in late and I apologize for that, a sample ordinance from the city of Bryan just because I checked there first and thought it was a pretty good ordinance. But it's a little bit better in terms of requiring, making that obligation to connect the meter at the place where the city identifies the meter location than our current ordinance is. Plus, I had a question. The Bryan ordinance also talks about backflow obligations and backflow prevention assemblies when water service is directly or indirectly connected to the city water system. And where if the customer's plumbing features are lower than the castings into the city's main, the customer must install backflow protection equipment as determined by the city. I don't think we have that. We don't have an ordinance. I don't know what we require in terms of the building permit, but I can imagine that there are a number of locations where the main is in the street and the street's higher than the house.
There's definitely that.
Yes, and I know the other question I've heard is that, well, when the sewer was put in, residents didn't have to make a connection to the sewer system. Well, the problem there is that if the city were to have done the sewer, we would have had to have obligated the customer to connect to the sewer main, because state law and the state constitution require that, whereas LCRA was a state agency when it built the sewer, and they weren't subject to that limitation. So, I have a situation where LCRA, well, we won't get into that, but I've heard that question raised. Well, LCRA, we didn't have to do it with LCRA, but that was a different situation, and they're not subject to the limitations of the statute that apply only to cities. So, I would think that we might want to ask staff to take a look at the Bryan ordinance and see if there's anything they think they need in order to be able to enforce obligating a new builder or a builder with on a tear down lot to connect to the main without reimbursement. And have we had a lot of complaints on this issue?
No, we just had a discussion about trying to not have missed opportunities with new construction to make sure that staff had brought up the problem that they have no teeth in the ordinance to be able to require an owner who's building a new home to mandate that they tie into the front water line.
I would suggest they take a look at the 37-7A, our current ordinance, that says, the A provision says, the city undertakes to provide water service only at the location of its water distribution mains and requires each customer to furnish all facilities and easements necessary to reach the city's water mains. The city requires each customer's water meter to be located as close as practicable to the city water distribution system.
Right, but if we haven't abandoned the back water line.
I'm sorry?
If we haven't abandoned the back water line, there's no way to compel someone who's building the home. Hey, we understand that, because they could read that and say, I am on the water system, and this is the closest practical place, so I'm good.
So the lines where there's been a backwater line, well, we've had this question over with the CIP project, that there's some debate about whether certain lines have been abandoned or not.
Well, we have some that are still active.
Okay.
Oh,
Like
and I
some
meant
backyard lines where there's a line in the street and behind
Right.
the house in both places.
Okay.
That's happening on my street, for
Yeah.
instance.
So I think we need to have staff take a look at the alternate ordinance and bring something back to us.
Right, and that's why I asked about how many houses do we have that still have backyard meters?
Yes, we'll
So that
definitely
we-
find the answer
So
to
we know
that.
how many,
Or where
We're
it's
looking at-
really where there are two lines active that
Compel
would
them
provide
to-
service to any lot, whether or not,
Compel them to go
Well,
to the one that's out at the street,
or
to the
both,
front.
or both,
or both.
things. You know,
Right.
where there are backyard meters and where there are backyard meters, where there are two lines.
Right.
Well, and to that point, I mean, similarly, when people are doing a major remodel that then necessitates them having a larger new water line because they have to have a sprinkler system and that type of thing, then I would think we might want to apply that same standard of saying, okay, well, you have to have a new water line, a larger water line going into your house.
They have to have a bigger meter. So
And
the
get a bigger
city's meter would have to be replaced.
Oh, it's just the meter.
Well,
Okay.
no, I mean, the line
Yeah,
also, but.
the line and the meters, so then, again, if possible, the same thing applies. You're already doing a major reinstall rather than having the city front that bill, like, have that be part of the remodel budget on that size of a remodel, I would think might make sense.
Yeah, and I do think once we know exactly how many we're dealing with, it probably gives us a sense of how we should approach it.
Yeah.
I mean, the main reason that you have item number 11 is because this topic came up on an agenda item in the past that was not, it was an ancillary issue to the agenda item that was previously posted. You'd said that you wanted to bring it back, so that's what this is, but we didn't know how you would want to have it back in terms of the drafting of the actual ordinance, so it's helpful that you provided the
I'm-
ordinance from Brian, and it's helpful. We just wanted to hear the conversation in a formal posting setting, and then we'll bring you something back to have further debate about. So if you had any suggestions, like the Brian suggestion, we'll take a look at that. We'll talk to Kay Freeze. We'll get a sense of how many exactly we're talking about. This is more of an information gathering, and then we're going to bring you back something to debate further.
I'm happy to send back a draft to staff for purposes of y'all working on it with Kay Freeze, and that might take into account what we've discussed here.
Happy to do that.
Saves money.
And in the, if you'll work on that, we'll work on getting a handle on exactly how many of these we're talking about.
Right.
And Ms. Kaler's on vacation this week, so we'll have her back, I think, next week. Is that right? Or later this week. Okay. Happy to entertain a motion, but probably, no, I'm not happy to entertain a motion because that's not how we posted it. So we will look forward to a motion next time. All right, with that, we will close agenda item number 11 and move on to agenda item number 12. Discussion and possible action to approve language to be included in a future ordinance requiring residential construction fences. So this also was an issue that we've talked about a time or two in the past, or that came up in conversation, but not in an actual posting. I put this on, it was not suggested by council that we bring it back to you, but it's, I think it's a good idea. We have talked about it in the past on a number of occasions. To be quite honest with you, there was a time several years ago that I was actually opposed to this policy. But I think it actually would probably solve some problems for us. And in my current role, I have a different view of certain things in the world, and I think this would make my life easier if we just fenced off some of these projects and was done with it. So with that in mind, we did give you a recommendation of language. This is language that is, in my mind, broad enough to accomplish the goal, or specific enough to accomplish the goal, but broad enough and flexible enough for us to make it fit kind of in each circumstance. Because whatever policy council were to adopt, I would ask you to do it in a way that we can, from a administrative and execution of the policy perspective, we've got a little room to work. So we try to keep it specific enough that we knew what we were getting, but broad enough that we could, and flexible enough that we could manage it how we needed to. Because with the uniqueness of the projects and the uniqueness of the lots and lot sizes and lot shapes, that's gonna be different, all throughout the city. So having some flexibility, I think, is important. Anyway, with that, I'll put it in front of you. There you have it.
All right, so this is mandating that every construction has to have a fence, correct?
Yes, new construction.
New construction. And you mentioned you had new thoughts about this, so I would like to know what those are, like why.
Well, in the past, I just felt like it was added cost. I felt like it was added cost on projects that wasn't totally necessary. I felt like it was being too restrictive on how builders and owners would be able to stage their materials on site. Just a convenience issue a lot of times. Those were my main concerns from kind of the consumer builder perspective. I actually think this would probably make life easy today. As I sit today, I think this would actually probably make life easier on builders. There are some really good builders in town. Both good and bad will remain unnamed, but there's one in particular who I have a good relationship with. Our building official has a good relationship. He runs a great job site and a really clean job site, and he fences, and it looks good. It looks nice. It maintains the aesthetic appeal of the neighborhood while the project's going on. And so I think if that's what you're seeing from the curb, I think it will cause fewer complaints. I think it'll just cause fewer people to be upset with the builder, and I think everybody will get along better if you just fence it and have that's why we put in the fabric. I actually Googled mesh fabric privacy screen is a term. It is the green mesh stuff that you see on construction fences. Because theoretically, if you didn't have that in there, somebody could just put up
A lot of it's black.
Sure.
Just put
Yeah,
up
or black, yeah.
A little bit of tar paper.
Are we getting many complaints? I mean, are people?
Not really, but I mean, there's one in particular that we know of well that's had a number of complaints about the cleanliness of the job site.
Yeah.
And I actually witnessed me enforcing on that personally after staff had tried to do it twice. And they finally did, we finally worked with them enough to get the job site cleaned up. You would still have to have a clean job site, but I think being able to just basically privacy fence the whole thing, I think it's going to be better.
Yeah, it will keep the trash out of the neighbors' yards.
Right.
There's a lot of, this one site had a lot of, fast food trash.
Yeah.
It will also help control the dust and dirt
Sure.
that blows as between yards. And if you have the requirement that the fence be 6 feet high, I think you have fewer kids playing in the construction area, before and after working hours than
I
Well,
think
and
you're right.
you would be there now.
The only concern or the main concern that I see or have is it makes the site invisible. It's very easy for a child particularly to slip through a gate that's not super tight or whatever, and then suddenly they're in a work site that if they were to get into trouble or to get hurt, you're not going to see them. Like, they're not going to be visible. It's maybe a minor concern.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, and that has been an issue that's been brought up. I would also argue the flip side of that is if
it's just wide open.
If it's
they
wide
can-
open
yeah.
and you've got exposed rebar and you've got nails
Glass.
sticking up and glass and that sort of thing, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another on which is more dangerous or less dangerous.
Right. Sure.
So,
My biggest concern with the wording on here is that, and I appreciate your interest in having flexible wording, but place so as to not placing it so as to constitute a traffic hazard is too vague. because it needs to be, I mean, this doesn't say where it has to be at all. There's nothing on there that says where you place it. And that, to me, is one of the biggest issues, because people are placing them right at the street, right at the curb, and that, by definition, is a traffic hazard, because you cannot see around it in a lot of places with our curved streets and intersections.
And so our thought was this flexibility would allow us to, so, for instance, that project that's right across from the baseball field that we've talked about, like, that's a small, the way that lot is structured, it would be very, very, very difficult for that contractor to be able to physically get their building materials on that site if they don't put that fence very close to the street. Now, if it is very close to the street, it's not going to cause any problems, because there's no visibility issue, because it's all a straight line. But to your point, if it's somewhere where it's on a corner, there's a turn, there's some sort of visibility, it would be how we would enforce this is to make sure that we would catty corner or diagonal across, like a stop sign, a corner, to make sure that everyone can see, and we would possibly move it back. We would always try to make sure on those instances that it is the way you describe.
Well, except that I would argue that it still is a visibility issue if it's all the way up to the street, because you've got houses on either side of it that have driveways, and when there is black all the way up to the street, they can't see what's coming down the street. And if you have to back out onto Rollingwood Drive, and you have to back out far enough where you're sticking out in the street before you can see if anybody's coming, that is a traffic hazard.
Well, I agree, and this would say that it couldn't be placed like that if it constituted a traffic hazard.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. It constitutes a traffic hazard anywhere that it's all the way up to the property line, because you are gonna have.
But it doesn't every time. So you could have it up to the property line, but then the closer you got, like if within, say, 10 feet of that driveway that you're talking about, if you required it to keep your visibility, your line of visibility, from that driveway, say right or left, I think that you can make accommodation, is my
Right.
point.
But what I would add to this is that the person who makes the call is the building official.
Yes.
Something and that's not in this.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
I sent in another copy of an ordinance I found online, but it has language, the building official is authorized to require that the building official is authorized to require that construction fences be of a solid construction to ensure the safety of the public. I would say, and placed so as to ensure the safety of the public. So you could have the flexibility in what the standard is, but it's the building official's call.
But then that puts all the pressure on the building official.
Well,
And when you have not defined what is okay, then, I mean, we've had this problem with drainage stuff too.
Well,
where
how
it's up
would
to
you-
the
how
city
would you-
engineer can decide if this is okay or not, and it's like,
how would you describe the design so that it takes into account, would you have a design criteria for corners and setback, or
to
how would
me,
you?
at a minimum, I
how
would
would you-
say no construction fences in the right of way.
In the right, okay, the right of way being the setback?
No, the right of way from the street.
It's 5 feet, basically,
That's 10 feet,
or 10.
yeah.
And that's where I think, I mean, if you're waiting on your lumber and your brick and your mortar and I just, depending on the lot size, I mean, it might be fine, but on
Then
some, I
another
think.
30 feet. to the front of where they're building. From the front property line, the property line is 10 feet back from the street, just about everywhere, and then the setback's another 30 feet, so you got 40 feet from the curb to the front building line on the street frontage, at least at the front, and also on the side, unless you've got the whole, makes a block and you can get the 20-foot side setback.
I hear you, but by the time you get forms and everything else into a space, that it gets tight quick.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe they need to consider that when they decide how big a house they're gonna build on
Well,
their lot.
that's not this debate. That's,
Yeah,
And all the
It's
building
it's a
materials have to be
safety
inside the
issue.
fence, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
that would be I think that's
yeah,
the way to go.
at least behind the curb.
well, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But that's not happening. We have people who violate that too,
Right.
regularly.
Mhm.
Some builders, but, well,
Public
Sean-
comment?
the other, oh,
Go ahead, no,
okay.
finish.
The other thought I thought was good was requiring that the fence be locked when when it's outside of construction hours or when no one's on the lot.
Sure. Yeah.
And that will help keep kids out of it too. And there's another provision that would require that the fence not have any signs, any advertising signs on it, other than who's the owner and the architect, and would be required, you would be required to post your building permit on the fence, so you can see, so people passing by or neighbors that need to get in contact with them, with the owner or the builder, can have the information right there on the permit and know that it's permitted.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Speak? All right, so, I've thought a little bit about this, because I know we discussed this like 2 or 3 times the past couple meetings, and when I'm out kind of just going through the neighborhood on a run or whatever, one thing that occurred to me about like the corner lots was exactly what you kind of suggested. I wasn't actually, I don't know why I didn't think about cutting an angle. I was just like, well, you could just take the privacy fencing down around there and you could see around the corner. So I do think something like you're saying, like just make the fence be designed a little differently in that corner, still give space on the inside and still would let you see around the corner. I understand Sarah's point about the lots, and I have a house about to probably go down next to me, and it might be months. I don't know how long it takes for these permits to get approved or whatever, designs drawn. But the house next to me just sold, so I'm sure I'll get to see what it's like to have the fence, right up next to me, and how that affects our ability to back out on Rollingwood Drive. But one of the things I also noticed is the house, like 3 or 4 doors down, that is being built. Like, I don't know, like, I'm not a builder, but even it seems tight, even where they have the fence there. So I do see what you're saying about,
Yeah.
having some space to like stage your construction in there. So I don't really know what the right answer is, but I see, I guess, both sides. But I do think like corner things could be solved, I think, by just making the fence design a little different. And maybe, I'd love to go back and measure that, like that house, to see how far, is it 30 feet from the street? Because it looks a lot closer. And then I think also there's a lot, I don't know how we measure this, and maybe it's not really, I don't want to go off on a tangent on this, but like the house, like where is that 30 feet measured? Is it to kind of like the main foundation of the house? Because a lot of these have like steps and other structural things that come out in front, and that, I'm like, that's what I'm really looking at this one house. I'm like, there's no, like, even where the fence is now, like, I don't see how there's any room for them to put anything else up in there. I mean, especially if you moved it back like another 10 or 15 feet. I mean, I'd like to see what it looks like, but yeah. I'm not a builder and I've never built a house, so I don't really know. All I can do is just sort of look while I'm running, see what I see.
Well, obviously, this is not ready. Again, we just brought this to you this evening to get this input. You've got 30 days to walk around and ponder this, and then come loaded to debate one another next time. We'll enforce whatever policy you adopt.
Well, is there a way to kind of encourage them, but, I mean, what I'm hearing from this discussion is making it mandatory. There may be builder situations where it's probably just too onerous on the builder to maybe make it mandatory, and it might not, and it may cause more safety issues as well at the same time. Like maybe highly encourage it. It's, you know.
Let us put pen to paper on it, I think. I would like to not put our building official in the crosshairs on yet another issue. Let us work on it. Maybe there's something that we can do to address or kind of meet Sarah halfway on the visibility piece. I'll have to think about how to craft that language, but
I'm trying to keep our building official from being in the crosshairs
I
by
know,
having something that's vague that then somebody's
I-
going, it's not a problem, I should
And-
be able to do this,
Yeah,
and
if
then
we're gonna
it's
have a
like,
requirement, I want it enforceable.
yeah, and
Right.
admittedly, this language, while flexible, does, I agree with you. So let us see if we can't tighten it. I'll probably will bring something back that's not quite what has been discussed, but is more specific than this. And
Wh-
so, and then y'all can do with it what you want. This will give us enough to take another stab at actually putting it on paper, and then you can debate it next time.
The one other comment I had was, this doesn't tell the builder when the fence has to be up.
So that was one thing that I did talk to the building official about. We believe that it should probably be after demolition, because by the time you get, you're gonna tear your own fence down if you're having to get that big equipment in there with the big, like, it probably needs to be after you do your demo, but before you actually set forms. Like, you can get your materials in, and then you do the fence, and then you can start setting
Right.
forms.
Well, I would suggest it be up before any permitted activity, not require it for demolition, but require it for anything else that requires a permit.
And I think we're saying the same thing, because
Yeah.
the permitted activity would actually be setting the forms.
Right,
But you could do your demo. Now there's maybe a gray area, because I think that there needs to be the ability to
There is
do
a-
your first, offload your first set of materials, because a lot of those forms and all of that takes a lot to get it in. But once you get it in, then you have to put your fence up. That's what we were thinking here.
well,
And we can look and see if we need to actually call that out. I know that's what the building official was thinking. I don't know if she felt like she already had what she needed in the code. We'll look at that.
Okay.
I'll see what you mean.
do you still have a question? Shanti had a,
Yes, ma'am.
Well, yes, just a comment that came up at the last meeting. Yes, I have to go through this. Shanti Jayakumar, 3309 Parkers Drive. I think Sarah has a very good point, and it was raised at the last discussion about the access to the water meter. I don't know how close to the curb the water meters are, probably within the 5 feet or whatever our right-of-way is. So maintaining a right-of-way, because some of these construction projects can go on for 2 and 3 years. I had a neighbor's house that went on for 3 years. So all I'm saying is the city needs to put down their little footprint and say, okay, this is our right-of-way, no matter what. You don't know what you're going to have to do along the whole street length here in your right-of-way tomorrow. I don't know. I'm just saying. Or there's a fire truck that has to come, and anyway, staying within our right of way or asking that the fence is outside of the right of way. You guys decide, 5 or 10 feet. I mean, so many things have changed. I don't know where you are right now, but access to our utilities, that's why we have a right of way. So
Yeah.
that's my 2 cents.
And the lift stations,
I'm sorry?
and the lift stations,
Yeah, things like that.
yes. So they're not
So one thing
behind the
that just
construction
occurred to me,
fence.
we might, and we'll ponder this also. So it's sort of related to that, less about water, but if there is some sort of need for us to access the property on the weekend, like we probably need to give some thought to
I've seen an ordinance that says
city
that,
access.
that requires a key, you know, the keys be,
Or a
key,
code or.
actually, I think the easiest would be to just require a city lock that goes. If you've been
Right.
raised on a farm like me, you just
Right.
do your lock through their lock,
yeah,
and then you can always get in.
Right.
So,
right.
and then that could be a code, and then we don't have to keep up with keys.
Right.
And it may be similar to currently when they read backyard meters that are enclosed in fences and locked up. They generally just have a code of the resident if they have a water meter in their backyard.
Oh, okay. So we've got some precedent,
Mhm.
but we probably should call that out. Anyway, we'll look at that too. Okay, we'll have, it may not be perfect, but we'll have something back for you to ponder next time. Anything else? Okay, with that, we'll move on from item number 12 to item number 13, discussion of possible action to update building permit applications consistent with current ordinances and requirements, including ordinance number 20180919B, requiring designation of a responsible person for permit compliance, and discussion and possible action as to current permits not in compliance with ordinance requirements. This is identical to the agenda item from last meeting by Ms. Brown, and I'll recognize Ms. Brown.
I brought this back. We had quite a discussion about this at the last meeting. I know there've been some developments since then that Carrie's been working on. And it may be appropriate to pass on this item and item 14 until Carrie, our building official, can be here. But I know that in talking with her about a week ago, there've been 2 things that have happened since last meeting. One is that she is now posting all the permits on a Excel spreadsheet on the planning and development webpage of the city's website. There is some information on that Excel spreadsheet. For example, the designated responsible person, that I know she's working on getting that information up to date, and to have an individual and a telephone number and not an entity, or a to be decided. So I think and I also understand that in going through that list, she also has identified some permits that are maybe close to expiration, and I know that she sent a letter to, I believe, all current contractors regarding issues about keeping their permits up to date and at the site. So I would like for her to be able to tell us what's been done, and then to be able to ask what else she needs in terms of ordinances or policies to be able to bring everything up to our existing code requirements. That's the same issue. So I'm not recommending any action on item 13 tonight.
Okay, and I'll also pull up item number 14.
And the same issue there. This was set to identify what our policies are as to inspections, who does what inspections, when do they do them, and what is our policy for compliance when there is a violation. I've gotten quite a bit of feedback since the last meeting that the city of Rollingwood used to have a designated police officer as a code compliance officer. And the community was comfortable with that, knew who to call when they thought there was a problem. And then we had someone on the police force who was making a fairly regular visit around the properties and identifying where concerns were. And contractors were aware that, you know, there would be periodic inspection. So that's what this item is intended to address. And again, I would recommend we take this item back up on the next agenda when Carrie can be here and we can identify what those practices are and how we might want to either put them in writing so the community knows who to call on, whether we want to have a code compliance officer. And that would be my recommendation on this item.
Okay,
And some other things that you know, I know we have ATS, or ARS, that is doing some inspections. We have K-Freeze that's doing drainage reviews. But we have things in our ordinance like trash pickup daily, whether there's fencing, posting the permits, building materials in the street, silt fences, stacking building materials within the drip line of a tree that aren't designated for inspection by either of the consulting firms. And so I think we need to know I need to know as a council member what that process is and who's going to be enforcing it. So just to describe why I put it on the agenda.
okay. We are trying to do a better job on enforcement.
Well, I think we need to have I think there's still some misunderstanding about whether it's the building official's job to do that inspection and enforcement, or when the handoff is, and who the public is to call if they believe there's a violation. And then also, what we know, we've had some problem builders. The problems have gone on for a number of weeks or more, and it doesn't, the public also needs to know what the policy is. And so that would be the way of stating those policies in writing and making sure our community knows what is expected.
Okay.
Okay.
And I may try to work with you to give a little bit more specificity to both of these
Great.
before next meeting, so that we have a posting that the public can have a better understanding of what the goal is.
Right.
And we'll visit with our building official when she gets back. Hopefully she's well rested.
Yeah. So, thank you for your indulgence. I'll bring this back.
Yes, ma'am. Moving on, closing out item number 13, number 14, moving on to item number 15, discussion and possible action regarding the status of the city's official zoning map, including incorporation of the action by the council September 16, 2020 to reflect 6 Pleasant Cove with the residential zone, including discussion of any necessary changes to city ordinance section 10726. This is identical to the agenda item from last session. Ms. Brown, recognize you as your agenda item.
Thank you. This is again a follow-up. At the last meeting, we had the presentation on the GIS mapping and the zoning layer, I guess is the correct term, to those maps. This is to see how far along we are in bringing that to conclusion.
Not far at all.
Okay. And then also, I think we need to have our city attorney take a look at our current ordinance that describes what our official zoning map is, because it's in terms that talk about the mayor and the building official signing the map. And it is a physical hard copy map. And who's to do what as the city council approves each zoning change. So I think we need to, this GIS electronic map is gonna become our official zoning map, or one layer of it will become our official zoning map, we need to amend our ordinance so that it recognizes that map as our official zoning map. And then the third item, when we talked about the GIS map at last meeting, there was some discussion about whether the GIS map would be a public or a private document or program. And I did some looking around on other city websites, and every one I looked up, their GIS mapping is fully public. And I think we need to consider that issue, see if there are if there's data or any layer of that would have any kind of privacy issue associated with it or proprietary data, and then design a map, design a product, if that's the right term for it, that will provide the public information in a public way.
Yeah, in my mind, there was always a public component to the GIS interactive map. That said, I definitely think there are parts of it that need to not be public.
Well, I think we need to define, if there is non-public information, we need to define what that is.
Yeah.
And then we also need to.
I mean, I seriously doubt that a terrorist is going to. I mean, I was involved with some of these bills when they went through natural resources in the House and the Senate, and I specifically remember excluding certain infrastructure components.
I could see that, yes.
To the public information laws, and the reason being, if there were, like, I don't believe that there will be a terrorist strike Rollingwood, but if there were, knowing where the exact two locations of the lift stations, or of the exact two locations where all of our potable water comes from Austin Water.
Our police,
Right.
where our police data facilities
Right.
are. But that doesn't mean we make the whole thing.
Sure, right.
Private.
Zoning and there's a whole host of things that I think would be helpful and could be public and should be. So, I agree.
Yes. So this is just, I'll keep this on here till we have a zoning map, an official zoning map.
And I did talk to Ms. Kaler about the research components. I mean, those addresses that we went through last time, I think they're provided here. I mean, there's a lot, there are a number of them. And some of them are easy to pull information on. She's in the process of doing that. But some of them are not going to be easy and will probably require title work or require possibly legal, possibly. So there's going to be cost associated with some of those. Now the question is, do we want to go to that expense or not?
Right.
And are we in the ballpark, and is that from a legal perspective good enough? I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I think it will depend on what for zoning, you're really designating the use of the property by parcel. So you don't have to have the meets and bounds to be able to do that. And some of the issues on where the city's boundaries are and those kind of things need to be resolved at some point, but there's some of those items, it didn't seem to me had to be resolved in order to zone a parcel.
That's fair.
Yeah. So it
And
could
I
be
guess-
that goes
and-
to different layers of the
And I
map.
would be interested in having council's guidance on, if that's council's directive, hey, let's move forward to make sure we wrap up the zoning part and then continue on with the research of if we have the right parcels and all of that. Like, I would be interested to know how you all want us to proceed.
Okay. I can go through that list and
Why don't you
provide my opinion on it.
Okay,
if
do that and we'll readdress it next time.
Yes. And I think there are some issues that are a little more, important with respect to, those maps, where there are, like 6 Pleasant Cove, that everybody knows that that's a residential lot, it should be shown as a residential lot. And, there's some boundary line,
But see,
property
we need
line
to-
issues that are,
But some of that we need to just go back and dot the i's and cross the t's and make sure that it was done correctly in its origin.
you've got the reference to the minutes where
Right.
last year's
We're just
council
using that one
corrected-
as an example,
Made
but-
it official if it hadn't been already official.
Right.
Yeah, in that situation, but there's some other issues like the boundary line between the park and the city property.
Right.
And there's been work done on that can be provided to correct, make sure the map gets official with respect to that.
Okay, this was the issue that I had some public comment on,
Mm-hmm.
so
Great.
consider me signed in.
Okay.
Okay, so I want to give you all something first before. This relates to what I'm going to tell you.
Oh, that's funny.
What?
What you're about to talk about, she and I just noticed the other day.
Oh, okay, well,
I asked about this, so
okay.
I'm
Um,
interested to be
Yeah,
educated.
so there's a list of, what do you call it, items under review in your package, under this item, which shows, a whole bunch of addresses where you have some reviews to do on but this one is not on it. Okay? This is popularly called the bulge. Okay? And what I want you all to notice is, long time ago, when Hatley developed, George Hatley, not A.B. developed one part of Rollingwood and George developed the one part of Rollingwood. So Gentry Road would just veer off. The first map shows that. In fact, we should never have it on this 2013 map, but it was left over by some oversight. See where I have put a round there? That's Gentry that was changed in the 1970s. Okay? So then if you turn over to the next sheet, it shows you a detail of that, close-up of that, and see where it hits. It hits the boundary line of the pool, okay? And in fact, Brian Ryder has done all the research on this from a legal standpoint, and he's surprised that the city still continued to show this on a 2013 map. But be that as it may, see that little bulge there where Gentry comes and hits? Okay, so the last map is from when the pool people submitted their application for the tennis courts. So I don't have a color printer, and that's why I wrote down whatever that map says there. And it indicates how that portion is part of the Hatley Park Subdivision 1. It was transferred, and it's on book number, whatever, our attorney can tell us what that is. But it says here, this portion of Lot 1 Western Hill Athletic Club addition was incorporated into Lot 1 Hatley Park subdivision. So it does not belong to the pool, and it's not an entity by itself. It is part of the park. So no map in future should have a bump, okay? That's the purpose of these maps to you guys. Now, Brian Ryder has gone in and done all the research from microfiche and other documents, and he'll be the best person to approach, so he can talk legalese to other legal minds here. And so it's something that's very, very important before you adopt your zoning map, to make sure Because I have some old maps from the 1970s. There's no bulge on it. And then all of a sudden, 2013, we have our engineer make up a map that shows a bulge. And that doesn't exist or should not exist in a zoning map. Okay? I really want us to put this behind us so that in future nobody thinks, oh, that's just a shared property to put your garbage dumpster.
Yeah.
It is not. It is part of the park. And if you want more research on it, I've done some of it, but I don't have the legal standing to tell you that when Mr. Hatley first sold about 10 and a half acres, something like that, to the Optimist Club, there was a bulge there at one time because it was left open for the Gentry Drive to come there and hit that point. And then it was taken off when he sold them the pool. This was before the pool existed. So on and on and on. I have a lot of history collected on that. But it is something that somebody like Brian Ryder, who's done some work on this, needs to look at it. But suffice it to say, I want to make sure that this council does not leave that bulge in place.
Okay.
Okay?
Noted.
It does not exist. It's part of our park, not part of anybody else's land but ours. Okay? That's my point.
Thank you.
Okay.
And for the record, I'm agnostic. I just want the map to be correct.
Me too.
So, and I think that we probably need to retain someone to do that research. And I'm told that
Roxanne, I think you were you
Ms. McKee has her
waving your
hand
I
hand?
think I wasn't sure which bulge Shanti was referring to, so I knew immediately because that was something that I had questioned when I was mayor, because that's where the trash receptacle is you're talking about, right? And they also have a dirt pile over there that's kept for the baseball fields, right where you drive into the park.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That is the
She
area of the
clarified
bulge. The bulge area.
That impacts the pool's property for impervious cover calculations under our ordinance, right?
Yeah.
Determining how much of the property is theirs to apply the 50% limit to.
Let me add one more thing to that. So before the pool property, this is from my reading up on old.
I'd like,
records.
just for the record.
Oh, sorry.
I'd like us to stay kind of focused on the agenda item at
Okay.
hand. We're gonna get it related to the zoning map specifically.
Okay.
So that we don't get too far afield on items
Yeah.
that are possibly
All I
under
wanted-
litigation.
Okay, no, I don't want to take it off of that. But what I wanted to say was, at one point, the frontage to the pool was from this side. They did not have a frontage on Wallace until much later when Hatley sold them another portion where the tennis courts are right now.
Ah, got it.
And it's in my history record, so I just wanted
Well,
to
that's great.
bring that up to you, okay?
We may send a landman over to your home.
Well, I think Brian Ryder's research could shorten that process considerably, because he's gone back to the plats and the deeds.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Okay, Ms. Brown, anything else on agenda item 15?
That is it for me. I'll bring this back at next council's meeting.
Okay, yeah, if you could maybe give us a short list of what you think is pertinent,
Yes, I'll do that.
to adjust or satisfy
For the zoning,
for the zoning,
yes.
and then we can bifurcate out the rest and handle that at a later date, maybe. Be sure and add the bulge to your list.
Yes,
Okay.
add it.
With that, we will move on to agenda item, we'll move off of 15 and move on to agenda item 16. Update, discussion, and possible action on a franchise agreement with Austin Energy and certain utility projects related to utility easements. Ms. Wayman, will you give us a brief rundown on this, and I'll fill in with some of it also.
I sure will. So this came most recently to our attention during the audit. The auditors were questioning franchise fees from the city or from Austin Energy for the use of our right-of-ways for poles. We reached out to them, and they did not have a signed franchise agreement updated with the city of Rollingwood yet. All of their franchise agreements with their small municipalities near Austin that they serve expired in February 2021. At the July council meeting, the city council directed the city administrator and the city attorney to negotiate the additional requests to be added in the franchise agreement. Kind of put this in perspective, this was all happening right after the winter storm. A lot of trees near power lines had not been trimmed. So there were concerns about whether or not something could be added into the franchise agreement to beef up that section of the agreement stating that they would, do other things, take care of tree limbs, that sort of thing. We did send a letter to Austin Energy in October 2022. That's been included in the packet, and we did not receive a response.
So first of all, a thank you to Ms. Wayman and to Abel. They were going through our budget and cross-checking accounts receivable and those sorts of revenue line items, and they noticed that we were missing dollars from our franchise agreement with city, with Austin Energy. So kudos to them for catching it. Appreciative that they brought it to our attention. Then with a little bit of research, I remember too when we had this discussion several months ago. Long story short, we beat our chest to Austin Energy, and then they just decided not to pay us. So it didn't really work. That said, there is sort of a growing list of items that I think, I probably need to have a discussion with Austin Energy. There's some pole replacements that they've just left the old poles in place, and first of all, it took them forever to do the pole replacements, and now it remains to be seen if they're going to take the old ones down. They've not been all that receptive, although I think we can work through it on a pole relocation in the area of our Pleasant Nixon project. All of those items that we've kind of listed there in the one pager are, in my mind, things that we probably need to have a sit down with them about. The policy guidance that I would like from council is how you would like us to proceed with relation to the franchise agreement. I don't believe that we're going to be paid our franchise fees until we have this agreement in place. I agreed with council and I think maybe I actually led the charge on sending that letter that we discussed. My inclination is to say we're not signing a franchise agreement with you until you get right on all these other items. That said, it's kind of cutting our nose off to spite our face. So we don't have a lot of leverage, and I'll say that on the record. So I'm open to your thoughts. As a former regulatory attorney in this space, let me know what you think. But what do you all want me to do in moving forward? We tried the strongly worded letter route, and it has only ended in us not being paid.
I don't want to give up on the items in the letter, but I do think we ought to just sign their proposed renewal and go on with the franchise agreement as it is, and handle those items in separate one-on-ones with whoever's the appropriate person at the city or Austin Energy to handle it.
That's fine.
Yeah,
I think that's
I
probably
think it would take forever to negotiate contract language with Austin Energy on those letter items. So I think we sign the agreement, send it back with bill. For effective February of 2020 or 2021, whichever it was.
I think that's probably
Except
right.
that we don't have the data to figure out what the fee should be, right?
We just look at,
We
Uh,
don't, it's just a
historic-
percentage.
Right, it's a percentage of the energy cost that,
Yeah.
that they bill, which we don't have access to what
True.
that is, so.
Although it's always,
There's ways to get, there are ways to
Yeah.
get that.
and
Okay.
and it's always sort of been in a,
Yeah.
we've always budgeted for, I mean, it's always kind of been a
Fairly
similar,
consistent.
pretty consistent ballpark.
The PUC will enforce the requirement that they provide that information if we want to audit it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we always budget for it, which is how we knew that it was missing. That's how we noticed that it was missing, so. Anyway, I think that's probably the right way to proceed, and I'm happy to try to sit with them. This Pleasant Nixon pole relocation is going to keep these items kind of at the top of our list anyway, so I just need to find the right person to go sit down with.
I just wanted to add that I'm in agreement with what Brooke just said. Just to proceed with signing the amendment.
Okay.
Retroactive to February of 2021, which I believe is when it lapsed last time.
Yeah. It said, well, the amendment actually says effective March 1, 2021, so that's their draft.
Well, I'm happy to, since we did have council action on the last course of action, I think let's go ahead, if you guys are okay with it, and give me an official motion for action on this one, and I'll proceed as you see fit.
Okay.
Go for it.
I would move that we authorize the mayor to execute amendment number 1 to the electric utility franchise agreement as it was presented to City of Rollingwood by the City of Austin.
I second it.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown. You have a second by Ms. McKee. Is there further discussion, council? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Ayes have it, 5-0. That will move on to agenda item number 17, discussion and possible action on a resolution of the City of Rollingwood to join with the state of Texas and political subdivisions of the state as a party in the Texas opioid settlement agreement secured by the Office of the Attorney General. I will call on council and Ms. Wayman to walk us through this, but you will remember, council, council's already taken similar action on similar resolution for a different specific company. And just as background, and with that, I will turn it over to council. Or Ashley.
So these agreements are the latest that have come forward. These are in the same vein as the original, I believe it was the Johnson & Johnson.
Yes, ma'am.
And so we do not need to re-adopt that original Texas term sheet, but we do need to execute both for Indo as well as for Teva, those pages. And because it was done, I think the recommendation would be that we do it in the same format, having that same authority coming from the governing body for purposes of submitting that documentation to the Attorney General for this round as well. It's also going to assist the Attorney General with that overall calculation for that global settlement as far as hoping to boost those numbers.
Thank you, council. Ms. Wayman, you have anything to add?
I don't, other than that there is a resolution in the packet with those as Exhibit A and B are the documents that were provided us by the Attorney General's office to sign and send back.
Well, that's it, council. I think it's, though I'm not generally very litigious, I think it's probably a no-brainer for the city on this particular one.
I move we adopt proposed resolution 2022-03-09-17, a resolution regarding the settlement of the Texas, or joining in with the settlement of the Texas opioid settlement agreements with the Office of the Attorney General, as proposed.
You have a motion, members. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Brown, a second from Ms. Hudson. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye, opposed say no. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 5-0. All right, moving on to agenda number 18, discussion and possible action regarding the Riley Page Stratford intersection. Mr. McDuffie, I believe this is your agenda item, and I will recognize you.
It is. So the six people from Austin reached out. We had a virtual meeting on the Page Riley Stratford. So the street is Page for basically a couple of houses till it gets to Stratford, but in our neighborhood it's Riley and Rollingwood. Right now there's a no left-hand turn off of Stratford coming into Rollingwood Drive. There's a lot of temporary poles put up, bendy poles, to prevent certain aspects of traffic flow. This was put in place to appease some concerns from the city of Rollingwood as a temporary measure to try to figure out if this was any kind of a solution. I know, some of our council and our mayor were there for that discussion at that time that was brought forth. It was not an engineered solution. One of the people that was in this meeting was the traffic engineer. She said it wasn't an engineered solution because basically you're then, for the people that do comply, it's going down to Ashworth or Ridgewood and cutting through there. A lot of the concern was the cut through traffic. At the time that this was done too, there were monitors placed up to do both traffic counts and record speeds along that street. The average speed that has been recorded was less than 20 miles an hour. That's probably a result of the fact that there are four-way stops all in up and down Riley. So basically, through the discussion, there's a very large intersection. The city of Austin has no intention to enforce the no left-hand turn. They don't have the resources. It doesn't appear that the city of Rollingwood is enforcing the no left-hand turn either. And so I'm opening it up for us to look at. Doesn't even make sense for us to try to have this no left-hand turn. My indication from the discussions with Austin was they are amenable to revisiting this, reworking it, trying to make something workable for the city of Rollingwood. I think it's in our best interest to work with Austin in coming to an agreeable solution for both of us. It's a very large asphalt area. One thing that did come up is perhaps a roundabout in that particular area might be a good proposed solution to both slow traffic and also prevent people from, because it's such a wide fan out, from people cutting the tangent and then possibly getting into head-on collisions at that intersection. So also I know Roxanne, or Ms. McKee, is the streets and roads, so certainly I don't want to step on anybody's area of expertise. So we've got.
Thank you, Phil.
Yep.
Any other discussions?
I can say that I have heard from and so far, a couple of citizens that, Rollingwood citizens who don't like the fact that they can't turn left into the city there, and wanted me to look into that, which I will.
Well, I can connect you with the traffic engineer that was at that meeting. She doesn't think it's a good solution either, but I can give you her contact information, you know, get you guys in touch with each other.
I will say, and I voted, you know, full disclosure, I've voted for what's there. I'm not wedded to any solution. I will say, to simply undo it, I think we will go back to hearing from the other set of neighbors that, I mean, we didn't just put it there for no reason. There was an outcry of those neighbors who live along that area to try to do something. I'm not saying it's a perfect solution, and I think it's fine to revisit it, certainly. And I don't know that we'll ever make everyone happy. There may be a better solution than what we have there now. I don't know that I was ever passionate about one way or the other. When I was, you know, when I sat in your seat, I was really just wanting to do whatever made the most number of Rollingwood residents pleased with, you know, trying to solve the problem at hand. I remember Ms. Hudson and I talking about, I think you knew that there would maybe be some long-term flip side to the
I'm
debate.
pretty sure I did not vote for this
I think
because
that-
I
Mhm.
didn't think it was a good long-term solution for the problem.
Yeah.
I also have heard from some citizens who said they are not in favor of it and have been turning left despite the no left-hand turn ordinance. So,
And as I recall, a big part of it was the speed with, because you're right, it's such a large intersection. What I remember from it was a large problem was the speed with which people would round that corner.
I think the biggest problem was the number of cars going down Riley.
Yeah.
the cut-through was also,
Yeah.
they were concerned, they were saying there were too many cars cutting through and that type of thing, but
It wasn't the intersection itself so much that was the issue, it was the how many cars were
Yeah.
coming through, leaving Zilker Park by going down Riley to get out because they couldn't get onto
And we were gonna
Barton
have-
Springs.
Right.
We were gonna have the police, like, on Sundays, put up a barricade or something like that.
There,
but
there was that.
And
there was the
then they
barricade.
came back with this idea of like, no, don't do that.
Right.
Well, they did the no left-hand turn and they did the barricade
The stop
temporarily as
sign,
well.
the stop sign
Right.
did not used to be there, so maybe, I don't remember the stop sign ever being
No,
No,
the
the
stop-
stop signs weren't there
The
either.
stop signs on Stratford are new, and that
Yeah.
probably slows things down, so
Mhm.
that should help just by itself, but
Well, I know, I mean, Shanti provided me with a whole big document on traffic calming and slowing down traffic, and a calming measure is a roundabout. A roundabout is a traffic slowing, calming measure as well.
But the city of Austin would have to do that.
Right.
yes.
And it sounds, at least informally in the discussion, that they're at least interested in possibly doing that.
To me, the better long-term option for this is for this all to be considered as part of the Zilker master plan and how their ingress and egress to the park itself is
Sure.
gonna be managed. Because I got,
They have an idea on that.
and I got texts from a resident today going, did you see this? They're planning on closing down, like shutting down access on part of Stratford.
Right.
And I went, what? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
we've got much bigger issues than just having no left turn from Stratford onto Riley.
True. But I
But-
mean, I think my view on the Zilker vision thing is, if they do any of those things, that is probably not gonna happen very quickly. And I don't think it, especially the two proposals of having cut-ups, you know, parallel to MOPAC and that type of thing, like, I don't, when I look at it, I don't think that affects this one way or the other. The other proposal was just cutting it off and having, which to me seems like a non-starter, like they just have a termination with a little cul-de-sac down there, down where the rowing dock is, and saying, you know, there's just not gonna be any, you'll be able to turn around, but that's it. That to me seems like that probably will go nowhere. Seems
Like the
such a,
traffic will all go through Rollingwood.
well, that seems like such a bad idea that that's just not gonna happen. But regardless, I am familiar with the Zilker thing, and when I look at that, I don't think this gets affected greatly one way or the other. There was also discussion, I remember, just so we kind of put everything out there, part of it is Waze and Google Maps and those other type applications directing traffic through Rollingwood. I don't know if I don't think there's much we can do about that. I think the cut through is going to happen more or less just because of where we are. We're so close to Zilker.
Can I ask if the people that were complaining in the first place that led to it, have they been satisfied with this as a resolution? Even though it's not an engineered one, have they seen a reduction in either the amount or speed of the traffic?
I think that is an appropriate question, and I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I mean, we can reach out to them. I do know the two households that did speak at that time, and I also, but I haven't reached out to them. I was leaving that to you to pursue, or should we all decide to pursue that or whatever, but I can tell you what those two households were at that meeting when that got voted through.
Well, I could be wrong, but my assumption would be you haven't heard anything further from them because it's probably helping some. But I guess one of the other questions, but I don't want to leave that to conjecture. I'll follow up on that. But I know that at one point there was discussion about trying to put in a stop sign there at the corner of Vance and Riley, in addition to the stop sign that we already have now at Hatley and Riley, and we simply couldn't justify that with the traffic counts and so forth.
Correct.
So I guess one of the other things I'm wondering is if it's two households that registered the complaints, is this something that happens on weekends? Is it 7 days a week? Is it during certain times of day, certain times of the week?
It was at the end of the day on the weekends was when it was the worst.
That was, yeah, that's my recollection of what they were complaining about. Also, I think special events are another issue when it can be, you know, for instance, the Kite Festival or the Trail of Lights Festival and that type of thing. In this discussion that I had with the City of Austin, they are amenable or seemed amenable to placing a traffic officer there to mitigate that as much as possible, the impact on the City of Rollingwood in those special circumstances as part of those special events, the same way as we do with ACO and that type of thing.
Okay.
I guess what I don't understand, and maybe help me understand, what's in it for the City of Austin? Why does the City of Austin, where are they coming from on it?
Well, once
they just
again,
lay
you're
asleep?
asking me to put myself in their mind, but I think they were trying to make the City of Rollingwood happy when we brought this issue before them and said, we don't, you know, so they put this temporary situation in there to try to appease the city of Rollingwood and some of our complaints. And I don't think once again, this is just conjecture, but based on my reading of the traffic engineer and that type of thing, they did not think this was a good idea. They didn't think this was particularly a well-engineered idea. This was a temporary placement there to see how it's going to work out. And I do think there are some things, such as the stop signs that are placed there, that while they're slowing down traffic, that's pretty much at a peak area. You know, it's kind of a high zone, so you have a lot of cars stacked. When we do have the summer, where the rowing dock particularly and Stratford coming up, there may be cars stacked up on those hills going on each side, that could become problematic as they have to stop at those stop signs and stuff like that. And once again, if we have a roundabout to where you're preventing high speeds but you're allowing a more organic traffic flow, it may prevent, you know, some stacking of cars on Stratford and basically get those cars through there and out of there much more quickly than the current the current situation that's there.
Okay.
I think City of Austin was being neighborly because we told them that we had a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you're done, I just wanted to, I can't listen.
I don't know that I'm done, but you go. And then
You know, I just wanted, I can't let a history moment pass here. Hey, I'm getting old here. I can only do it for a little while, so bear with me. So, couple of comments before I go there. Sarah was talking about, oh, you can't close Stratford. Well, just going to tell you about how it was. But I also, if I were living on Vance off of Riley, I would not want to have this obstruction of not taking a left turn to come in after I go rowing, come up the hill, and I can't take a left turn into my neighborhood. No. Some people down on Riley, yeah, they complained, or maybe even on the, I don't know who complained, but it was not fair to people who lived on Vance and Riley who want to come up and not be able to take a left turn. They would have to go, if they were a policeman, they would probably have to go to Ashworth, take a left there, or go to Ridgewood and take a left there. So if you think about residents along that 2 or 3 block area, if they are not permitted to take a left turn, I don't think it would be fair. So that's a policy issue. But I'm talking history. I just want to read out something to you.
Okay.
So when George Hatley and A.B. Hatley bought this 300 acres of what was ranch land at one time, the two brothers never got along very well. So part of the reason why a lot of the numbering on the streets in the A.B. Hatley goes east to west, and it's the same numbering system, and George's goes west to east, okay, stuff like that. And Flo always said that on the other side of Rollingwood, which is closer between Bee Caves and Rollingwood, that area was A.B. Hatley's. She always called it the poorer section, and she said George Hatley developed the one that was richer section, whatever that means. Okay, but what happened, I'll just read this part to you. In 1947, a division of property occurred between A.B. and George Hatley. The A.B. Hatleys took the approximately 86 acres along the Colorado River and began to develop Bluffington, Section 1 and 2. Beryl Hatley, who was the wife of A.B. Hatley, named the street Stratford Drive. Okay? AB and Beryl chose their home site on 3 acres for their home. So if you go on Riley, it dead ends. There used to be a nice big old mansion there. That was where AB and Beryl lived. Okay. The first other home site sold was 6 acres to Dewey and Joe Bradford. There's a whole bunch of names. But some years later, Austin took in all of Stratford Drive to the city, but thereby they got a better water system. Okay? The A.B. Hatleys cut Page Road, which is the 2 houses that are there, from Stratford southward to Rollingwood Drive, so they could have an exit. Stratford Drive was a landlocked piece of road. There was no exit on either side until they got the water line, and City of Austin came up on Stratford with the water line. Okay? So when the street was later completed, he named it, they called it Page. But George Hatley did not want the street to go through at all. His brother's street that was named Page. So what he did was, so when the street was later completed, he named it Riley Road for his brother-in-law, Vance Riley. There's a Vance Street also, the Vance Riley. Since in the beginning, Stratford Drive had dead-ended on both ends, those residents had to go through Rollingwood. Later, when Stratford Drive resident Lester Palmer became mayor of Austin, a bridge was built down at the riverside part of Dry Creek, and this eastward extension of Stratford Drive was completed. The west extension of Stratford Drive came in 1969 to 1970, when the Stratford water line was looped to Redbud Trail, so there would be enough pressure to serve Rollingwood. Just a little history lesson.
Yeah, it is.
So that's why
we
you
are
have Page.
interconnected.
I'm sorry?
We are interconnected.
I just thought I'd throw that
Yeah.
in for you.
That's impressive.
It's fascinating.
It
how
is
something
fascinating.
happened And why it happened.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
And now we have a no left turn intersection of Page and
Yeah.
Webster.
All right, we'll top that, council. And I am done now. So. Is there further discussion, any action? We can bring this back. We can allow council to do some more due diligence. We're happy if you give us guidance. We're happy to do some additional work on it.
Well, I have a meeting tomorrow at 11 o'clock, but other than that, I mean, Roxanne, I can give you what information I have, and, I guess authorize us to follow up. However,
Why don't if that meets Roxanne's approval, if you all want to visit, give it some more thought. I do think we should proceed with, kid gloves a little bit here, but
sure.
why don't y'all?
I'm happy to do that, look into it some more, work with Phil on it.
Okay. So why don't I give you a call after I'm done with my meeting, and we'll touch base tomorrow sometime if that works for you.
That's fine.
Okay.
And my only request of council would be, before we take any
Sure.
drastic action, I do think we owe it to some of those homeowners along
Sure.
that stretch to at least make them aware that something's going back on the agenda that they may be interested in.
Well, and keep in mind that the situation may have improved over there because it's been winter,
Oh, absolutely.
you
true.
know? And
Mm.
when
Yeah.
it's 75, 80 degrees,
Yeah.
again, there may be more people in the park
Yeah.
and more traffic on
Remind me of-
Riley.
Remind me of when this got put up. the current configuration?
Don't get me to lying. When did we vote on that? We will look and,
Okay.
actually, if you will follow up with
It's
Ms.
been in the
McKee on
last
that.
year or so.
Yeah.
Within the last year,
It was on the council agenda in May 2021.
you know, I think it was around May 2021.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't know when it got, I mean, that's when it got voted, but I don't know when it got put in. Also, I
Shortly
do think
thereafter.
that there is kind of some blatant ignoring of the no left-hand turn, so, you know, I don't think anything is going to be changed or corrected or anything very quickly, and I do think as summer rolls on and you start having people down at the rolling docks and that type of thing, you know, they'll find out how
More
effective
problematic.
this solution
Right.
has been or hasn't been too.
Yeah,
But
it might be worth doing some traffic counting too. Like, I don't know, you mentioned there was some traffic. I don't know if those were our numbers or Austin's numbers, but. if we
those
could put
are, my read on it was that was Austin's numbers, and I did drive down there, and it does look like there is still a monitor. I don't know if the monitor is still active, but there is a monitor right there at where Page and Riley become one. Basically, there is a standing monitor, it looks like, there. And once again, the traffic engineer said, you know, that their counts and their speeds were, you know, less than 20 miles an hour, and there wasn't significant counts.
Now, but did,
Now, yes, because it's winter.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it's also and I'm not a big fan of how it looks, but in fairness, it is definitely a calming, the way it's configured now, like it,
Sure.
yes, I'm sure, because
Oh, yes.
I've rounded that corner before quicker than I should have. Like, I understand the way it was before, you can get ahead of steam and.
Well, and
Anyway.
that's why I think a roundabout would both force people to get on the right side of the road and slow them down in the process. Like if you're going around a circle at the speeds that people might have been coming up Stratford because you're trying to get up those hills,
Right.
then, you know, anyway. But
Well, I'm wondering if you squared off that corner as opposed, as to what, alluding to what Gavin just said about picking up some speed going around the curve, if the corner was squared off, if that would help slow it down. You'd have to come to more of a complete stop in order to take your left.
sure.
Yeah.
That's kind of
That
what
was
I did.
sort of where I always was on this issue. I guess I've never been really clear on, is it the cut through traffic or the speed that's the issue? Because the speed, in my mind, is easier to address than the cut through traffic.
Right.
But I guess I'm a little suspect when, I'm a little suspect of Austin that they may be more interested in the cut through traffic than, like, the speed on our streets is not their concern. So I don't think they're laying awake at night worried about the speed on our streets.
I don't think they're concerned about the cut-through traffic either,
Yeah. That's
from
what I
their
thought.
standpoint, which is why I said that the only reason they started talking to us about this was to be neighborly,
I thought it was-
right? Because we told them that there was a problem.
Well, I thought that we were gonna put a barrier up on the weekends, and they were
They
like, "Oh no,
did.
that's not gonna fly. We need this open for safety reasons," and so that's why they did. I don't
Well,
know.
they did put up a barrier. I mean, I witnessed the barrier at least one weekend when I drove around it, but.
Okay. Well, you two visit and bring back the perfect solution, and we'll adopt it. Anything else on agenda item number 18? Moving on to agenda number 19, discussion and possible action to set dates for the third public workshop on the comprehensive plan and set dates for remaining tasks necessary for adoption of a comprehensive plan. Ms. Brown, I'll recognize you, and I have notes here and of a winning date in case you need to know what that date. I have notes here that Wednesday,
My
23rd.
granddaughter, I couldn't make a different, the Thursday or Friday because my granddaughter's getting married. So.
No problem.
But
Making
not
sure
me.
that I could read that.
Don't call Fidel.
So anyway, I'll recognize Ms. Brown, but just in case you don't know, Wednesday, March 23rd at 6 p.m. was sort of what worked for everyone.
Yes, March 20, we've talked, Ashley sent around a notice or a calendar date for setting the third workshop on the comprehensive plan, suggesting March 23rd at 6 p.m. That would be a standalone workshop, which I think is good. The last one went well. So I would recommend that we set a date of March 23rd for the third workshop for the comprehensive plan. And then also you'll see on this agenda item what the remaining tasks are to get the comprehensive plan adopted. Once the council has finished these considerations, then the next action would be to send the plan to the Planning and Zoning Commission so that they can review it. This is not actually drafting ordinances, but it is for the planning and zoning. There's a specific statutory requirement, I believe, for the Planning and Zoning Commission to approve a comprehensive plan. And then it would come back to the council, have two more readings like an ordinance before it could be finally adopted. So once we've finished the third workshop, then we also need to schedule those other tasks. And I'll keep it on the calendar, I'll keep it on my to-do list so that I keep bringing it back until we either adopt it or decide not to adopt it. But
Okay.
hopefully we'll adopt it, and I'll also, I think, for this last workshop, it's Parks and Recreation, mobility, meaning bike lanes, walking lanes, other kinds of mobility issues, including Bee Cave Road and Mopac South. With the mayor's permission, I'll draft another notice that we can put on our website and push public notice.
It would be nice
so
to
that
have
we-
some participation.
Yeah.
So we have more
Yeah, I would like,
participation. I'll also do one on
Yeah.
next door too.
It would be nice to have a little bit more participation, especially in light of what started the comprehensive plan.
Yes. Right.
What started the task
Right.
force anyway.
Or the task force, rather, yes.
Right.
If we could finish strong, that would be nice.
And I think it would be, let me ask your comment on this. I think I would, if it were me, I would draft that notice to say, if this will be the focus of concern, but if you have comments that you weren't able to attend workshop 1 or 2, please come and bring those comments.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So I would move that we set a date of March 23rd for the workshop, at March 23rd at 6 p.m. for the workshop number 3 on the comprehensive plan.
You have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Ayes have it, 5-0. Did you get who made the motion? It was McDuffie as the second. Yep. All right, moving on to agenda item number 20, discussion and possible action to schedule the 2022 spring cleanup event. Ms. Wayman, will you talk to us about spring cleaning?
Sure will. So in the past, we have held generally a spring well, usually twice a year, a spring and a fall cleanup. In past years, that included a dumpster in the park over the weekend in the upper parking lot, so people could, plan to take care of things that would need to be dumped and then bring them over the weekend. We would also generally staff this with a public works employee for at least a certain period of the day to help people load things up into the dumpster. During COVID, I think that was kind of what sparked the change to a citywide curbside pickup that would not then require interface of, staff members and the public. I believe last year, and it might have still been because of the aftermath of the storm, the winter storm, but I believe we had both, and we had dumpsters rotating up at the upper park for a very long time. So last year was kind of an anomaly, but we generally bring it to you all to schedule. I believe if we did a curbside, it would happen, during the week, likely on maybe one or two of the same days that we would normally have trash pickup, and then the dumpsters, we could have a weekend. The only consideration would be making sure we schedule with baseball and softball and let them know, because they generally use that for parking and fill it up. So
That's why usually we have it over spring break when they're not playing. But we have,
Right.
we have missed that shit for this year, so.
potentially, yeah. I don't know how quickly we could get one out there, or if the second weekend of spring break would still be, if usually both bookends of spring break would be open. We can definitely explore that with Waste Connections. But they're generally pretty good about getting us a dumpster when we need it, so.
Yeah. It'd just be less, like a week and a half notice for people.
True.
Yeah, that's true.
So just, we're talking both doing curbside and having the dumpster?
Whatever the council would like. I believe they're both, so you can also schedule your own, the city can schedule a curbside pickup for you. I don't know how many a year a resident gets, but they can call up here and let us know that they would like a bulk pickup from curbside, and we can schedule that through Waste Connections, I believe at any time. So this would just be another kind of added, we could do this citywide one day, whatever the council would like to do.
What are the costs?
It's included in our, right?
Yeah, I believe we have 2 dumpsters a year included in our contract. And they've always been really good to us and have made sure if we needed extra, and they generally might even pick up extra from the curb than they generally allow. They're usually pretty nice about that.
Yeah.
This has always been, just my 2 cents. First of all, this contractor has always been great. It blows my mind. Well, first of all, everyone should be a lot more appreciative as residents that we actually pay for this service for them.
Yep.
And we get no credit ever for that, even though it's in our.
I heard, I got credit out on the campaign trail.
Well, good.
Best trash ever. Trash pickup. Yes.
Good. Well, that's good. Makes me feel better that somebody got some credit for it. Secondly, it's a really good price. I still, it's the most bang that we get for what we spend on it.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just has nothing to do with this agenda item, but that's what I think about it. So, what do you want to do?
I personally think that the residents appreciate having the dumpsters.
I do too.
Yeah.
Because when we had the curbside, it said 1 or 2 items or whatever, and,
Yeah.
a lot of people store stuff up and want to get rid of it all at once, and so I think they appreciate having the dumpsters available to
Yes.
really clean up.
Yeah, I think as long as we can do it at some time, as Ashley said, where we're not impacting the baseball and softball, then I think we,
I
the
think-
first opportunity that will work.
Sure, I think probably any weekend other than spring break probably would. I'm sure we could have it on the side of the park at the top and try to take up at least as little amount of parking as we possibly could. And then we'll make a note to bring this back earlier next year and try to schedule at the February meeting But I don't believe last year the council specified a date, just said, oh, a weekend in March. So maybe we can do a weekend in March or early April, providing enough notice to residents if that's.
This may not be ideal, but it would probably not conflict with baseball. I don't know that they have games over Easter weekend.
True, but does anybody want to work on Easter weekend?
Well, I know, that's what I said. It's
Well, we
not
might be at the
ideal, but-
extravaganza in the lower park.
It's
so.
gotten personal here. You've now gotten to meddling.
Sorry.
I'm gonna have to do trash. I'm gonna have to clean out my garage on Easter.
No, you have to
Well,
clean
I
it out
mean-
ahead of time. You just have to take it to the dumpster.
That's fair enough. That's a good point.
And Ashley just brought, I know I've heard discussions of having festivities again, at least in the lower park, the Easter egg hunt and all that kind of stuff, so, I don't know.
The Easter egg hunt would not conflict with the dumpsters.
Sure.
Well, if you give us direction, we'll just try to find something that works in March or April. It may all be dictated by softball and baseball. Anyway.
Yeah.
And then our plan would be, we talked about trying to have some staff there like we've done in the past.
Yeah, I think we could, set specific hours and split it up where there's just, one person there a couple hours at a time on the weekend, enough to have it fully staffed.
And how have we advertised this in the past?
I think there was something in water
There was
bills,
too.
and then, I think there was just usually a little flyer in the water bill.
That's what I recall.
Right.
We
We
could
may
do a
have missed
Swift.
that.
We
could
probably have
Swift
missed
it.
that, but we could Swift and then.
Depends on when we set it up.
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So,
Good point.
Potentially, we might still, if we did it a little bit later, but I know we're
April.
already stuffing envelopes right now for the bills, so.
But not for April. If we did it. In
Right,
April.
not if we did it in April.
Yeah. Okay. Give us guidance, and we will carry out your wishes, council.
I
We're nearly-
move to request city staff and the mayor to investigate options for a spring cleanup date that will not conflict with baseball and softball, and provide dumpsters up at the park for residential use,
Are we-
residents' use, sorry.
And to set the date? And to go ahead and set it?
Sure.
And provide notification as necessary.
Also good, yes.
You have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion and a second by, who said that?
Phil.
By Mr. Duffy. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you, council. The mayor and department reports are all there at the bottom of the agenda, also available to those of you who are listening online, posted online. And that is it. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Duffy makes a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Thank you, council.
All right.